Hello, my name is Lloyd and welcome to Synarchy Education. Synarchy means collective or joint rulership. But to be able to have a free and collective rule, we need to be able to rule ourselves. And this is what this YouTube channel is all about. It's kind of like me recording my personal research into how I think I can become free and avoid being ruled over by, let's say, certain powerful elites that are knocking about out there. And it's my hope that, I've done a lot of this research and I found it really interesting, and I'm hoping it's going to help me find my path to synarchy and freedom. And I thought if I find it useful, I might as well share it with other people. So that's the aim of these videos, is just documenting my path to hopeful freedom. And if anyone else is interested, more than happy for you to have a watch as well, and hopefully you learn something. So in this video, I'm going to look at the 3 paths to truth, because I think this is really important for synarchy or self-rulership. You can't be self-ruled if you don't know what the truth is. And I just wanted to share an interesting kind of theory that I've come across, which is the 3 paths to truth. And these aren't this isn't my theory. This is a theory that's come from someone called Richard Rudd, who's the author of something called The Gene Keys. And this is something that he actually writes at the beginning of that book. And he says, so who, what, or wherever you are, if you're not continually transcending, then you are dying. And this is a theme I want to kind of explore in today's video. This idea of transcending, and what actually does that mean? And mixed with that, we're just going to have a look at Carl Jung's quote as well, another one of my favorites. And this is, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So we're going to mix those two together and hopefully pick this apart a little bit, and I'll introduce you to these 3 paths of truth. So first of all, let's look at that first quote again, and let's think about, what does transcending actually mean? So if we're not transcending, we're dying. But what does this transcending mean? And that's where I really want to start off this video. So there are 2 paths to transcendence that are being kind of put in front of us at the moment. One path is transcending by merging with machines, and that's kind of an ideology called transhumanism, which you might have heard of before, and then we'll have a quick look at that idea now.
Yeah, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or a transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses. And a transsexual is someone where you change your, penis into a vagina. And we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's so pathetically little. And okay, we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body.
Okay, so that is Peter Thiel talking about transhumanism, and it's pretty clear that he feels that transhumanism is the path for transcending or transcendence. And Peter Thiel is a very powerful person. He might be part of these elites that we might want to avoid being ruled over by. I don't know. I'm not no one knows for sure, do they? But certainly it's kind of a scary thought, for me personally at least, that we're going to see a lot of people who are taking that route of transcendence. So there is another one, and there's many people I could have shown you for this second path of transcending. I am a big fan of someone called David Hawkins, who actually has a map of consciousness, which I found really useful, particularly when I've been kind of doing my research or thinking about paths to truth. this idea of a map of consciousness, so you can have a look at where you are, and if your consciousness is increasing. I found it very useful. So I'm just going to show a quick quote of David Hawkins and his idea of finding truth and transcending.
This is a world dominated by the ego. To transcend the gravity of the ego is extraordinarily difficult. In fact, without higher truth, it's not possible. So one is dedicated to reaching the highest truth, or one genuflects to the ego. And that decision is what makes the difference in calibrated levels of truth. So, on the calibrated levels of consciousness, truth and God and divinity are at the top of the chart, and the ego is at the bottom of the chart. The world has had it backwards for a long time.
Okay, so we've had a look at the two paths. One path transcending through merging with machines. The other path, which is basically finding truth, isn't it? Finding truth and embodying that truth. And both of those, you could argue, are transcending, but which one is right for you? And, only you can decide. And hopefully, we're going to look at some ways to help you decide in this video. So, what is truth? If that's a path to transcendence, what is truth? Well, truth is, this is a dictionary definition. Truth is being what exists rather than what was thought, intended, or stated. So to really find out, who you are, or what the actual facts of a situation are, and that is where we find truth. And truth is hard to come by at the moment. Let's say we live in a very complex world. It's getting more and more complex all the time, I think. So it's quite easy to find some things that are false, particularly if you go online. I'm sure that you can find lots and lots of examples of things that are false. And when I say false, the definition of false are things that are not real but made to look or seem real. And AI is obviously going to be a big contributor to this as well. So again, we've got these two paths. Transcending, we can have more machine or more natural. And another way of looking at it is more of a top-down truth. So you get your truth handed to you by authorities, or you could try and find your truth on your own. And what we're going to find, I think, in the future is that there'll be many people who prefer to have their truth handed to them, and then we'll have a minority of people who are trying to find the truth for themselves. And I'm hopefully trying to preempt this a little bit and get in front and try and, do some thinking, or I'm personally trying to work on myself and work on my ways of finding the truth, because I think it's going to become more and more divided as the years go on. And I think there'll be a lot of people who kind of view finding your truth and rather than following what everyone else is doing, as a bit of a, you might be considered a bit of an outsider. And I think that's why I've included this quote here, or why this quote resonates with me so much. I think it's quite telling of the times we're in as well. So birds born in a cage think flying is an illness. And I think it's just something you're going to have to get used to if you do take the path of the three paths to truth. You might be considered a little bit crazy or a little bit mad at times. Okay, so let's dive into these three paths to truth. And I would suggest, if this interests you, to actually have a read of Richard Rudd's book. He has a book on contemplation, which is the middle path in here, but he touches on both concentration and meditation as well. So the three paths to truth. There are three classic paths that lead towards higher consciousness. They are meditation, concentration, and contemplation. Even though each path is markedly different, they all lead to the same final goal, absorption. So I think this is a great way of looking at the importance of truth, and the idea that, we've looked at Carl Jung's quote about truth being a privilege. And then we've also looked at transcendence and how transcendence and truth kind of go hand in hand. And then if we're able to follow that truth and absorb it and embody it, well, I think that's how you end up with higher levels of consciousness. So these are going to be some very important ideas in the near future, let's say. And I think a good way of modeling these three paths to truth is actually looking at our brain. So you may have heard this before, but our brain is split into two different sections. We have a left side of our brain and a right side of our brain. And actually those three paths to truth correlate very nicely with the map of our brain. So we have a left side of our brain, which is more detail orientated, more for analytical thought, more logic and mathematics. It's good for planning. This maybe a bit more cautious, a bit more planning. But this is a really useful way to find the truth. And this is probably the more textbook, the way that you might, be taught to learn about the truth in schools, well, not always. So to use logic to pick apart an idea, analyze an idea, and see if there's any logical fallacies. So this is our first path, concentration. It's concentration very much mixed with logic. And it's generally the path that most people will have kind of already have heard of. But there is another one, and that is meditation. So one of the quotes that Richard Rudd has about thinking is that you can get caught in thinking loops. And I think that's definitely a problem with the left side of the brain, or if you're just using concentration to find your truth, you can get caught in thought loops. And you don't want to think in loops, you want to think in spirals. You want to think in spirals and have like a level up of your thinking. And I believe that meditation is a great way to kind of level up your thinking or change gears or change out of a rut that you've got yourself in. And meditation actually corresponds to the right side of the brain, or the right hemisphere. And this is more to do with intuitive thought, holistic perception, non-verbal reasoning, creative art and creative writing, and imagination as well. So rather than sitting and concentrating and analyzing, this time you're just kind of posing a question and seeing what arises. And you do that over and over again until maybe an idea comes in to your brain from outside. And this is meditation. And that's not to say that all ideas that come through a meditation are true. Obviously, you need to go back and do your concentration and picking things apart. But this is another method, right? If you're getting caught in a loop and you're not making any progress, meditation's another avenue for finding truth. And our third one, which again does link to the brain, because there is actually a little part of the brain that links the left and right hemisphere together, and that's called the corpus callosum, which if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that is contemplation. And contemplation is like the middle way. It's a little bit of concentration, a little bit of meditation mixed together. So it's not all one, it's not all the other. You are doing a mixture of both. And you might see some people maybe like studying and they're not writing, or they're not just sitting in meditation. They're just kind of spacing out almost, it might look like, but they're maybe in deep contemplation, just trying to work out if something is true or if something resonates with themselves. And that's not a passive thing. It's not like meditation, and it's not a concentration. It's a bit of both. So you're thinking about an idea, seeing what arises, and then asking a question about it, and then asking another question and another question, and just seeing what arises. But it's the kind of interplay between questions and seeing what arises in your mind. And then again, this is a great way to stop you from getting caught in a thought loop. It will hopefully turn into a bit of a spiral where you're getting closer and closer to the truth. So the more you contemplate, the closer and closer you get to the truth. So to go on this path to find truth, it's not an easy one, right? You're going to need some courage. You're going to need to face a bit of backlash possibly, and people might think you're a bit mad. So it is a harder path, right? But the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. So if you haven't noticed already, there are certain worldviews or certain paths, for example, the path to transcendence, that are being put in front of us, let's say, or they are being dangled in front of us like a bit like a carrot. And if we're not careful, we could sleepwalk into a reality that we're not. It's not going to be in our best interest. Let's say it might be in the best interest of other people, but it might not necessarily be in our own personal best interest. And that's what Sinarchy is all about. It's all about self-rulership and collective rulership as a result of that. And the only way we can get there really is if we are have a little bit of courage to think our own way. And that is my idea of 3 paths to truth. So hopefully this is maybe sparked a little bit of interest in finding the truth for yourself. This is just a quick overview. I mean, you could spend lifetimes on each of these and still have more things to learn about each of them. So it's just a bit of an introduction. And I just wanted to finish on a couple of other things. So with the idea from Carl Jung that, you know, it's the privilege of a lifetime to become who you truly are. And then if we have these paths to truth, these will hopefully help us get there. And then truth is very much linked to transcendence and very much linked to high levels of consciousness. So truth is a seed. Once planted, it grows slowly, silently into freedom. And I think freedom is Sinarchy as well. So I just want to finish with this quote from Richard Rudd, and I would again encourage you to check out his work. So each time you take a leap towards truth, the frequency of your DNA leaps with you. This inner process takes time and requires as much patience as courage. But as you stay with the process, so you begin to taste the higher frequencies pulsing through your blood. This is an indescribable gift because it signifies the rebirth of the real you, the authentic you. And thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in another video soon.